Story 1. James Davis Richardson was born on September 7, 1967. He was born in the United States. He was a black male. When James was a child, he began to get into trouble. He did not follow rules. He was arrested for the first time as a juvenile. Over time, he was arrested 10 times before he became an adult. These arrests were for different things. He was arrested for theft, which means taking things that did not belong to him. He was arrested for truancy, which means he skipped school when he was supposed to be there. He was also arrested for fighting. His behavior as a young person showed that he did not respect the law. As James grew older, his problems with the law continued. He was convicted of aggravated robbery. Aggravated robbery means taking something from someone by force or fear, and using a weapon or causing harm. He was also convicted of burglary of a building. Burglary means entering a building without permission to commit a crime inside. James was sent to prison for these crimes. He served time for the aggravated robbery conviction. While he was in prison, he did not behave well. The prison kept records of his behavior. He was disciplined for destroying state property. He was also disciplined for striking an officer by throwing hot water on him. He was disciplined for creating a disturbance. These reports show that James continued to act out even when he was locked up. After serving part of his time for the burglary conviction, James was released. He had been given a sentence of 5 years, but he only served 4 months of that sentence. He was let out on parole. Parole means he was released early, but had to follow certain rules. At that point in his life, James was free again and living in the community. That is where his story stands before the events that would come next. On December 17, 1986, James Davis Richardson was out of prison. He had been on parole for about 3 months. He was living freely in the community. That day, James was with 2 other men. One was named Michael Ellison. The other was named James McHenry. These 3 men were together. Michael Ellison asked James McHenry to take him to a liquor store. McHenry agreed to drive. James Richardson went with them. The 3 men got into a car. McHenry drove the car. Richardson was in the car as well. They drove to a liquor store in Corsicana, Texas. The store was called Gusher Liquor Store. The owner of the store was a man named Gerald Abay. Gerald Abay was 35 years old. He was a white male. When they arrived at the liquor store, Michael Ellison and James McHenry went inside. James Richardson stayed in the car at first. He waited outside while the other 2 men went into the store. Inside the store, Ellison and McHenry acted like normal customers. Ellison picked up some beer. He went to the cash register to pay for the beer. While Ellison was paying, something changed. James Richardson got out of the car. He walked into the store. He did not come in to buy anything. He came in with a plan. As James McHenry was walking out of the store, James Richardson pulled out a pistol. The pistol was a .25 caliber handgun. Without warning, Richardson pointed the gun at Gerald Abay, the store owner. He shot Abay in the neck. That was the first shot. Abay was hit, but he did not fall right away. Richardson then shot Abay a second time. This time he shot him in the chest. Gerald Abay had his own gun. He kept a .38 caliber pistol for protection. Even though he had been shot twice, Abay pulled out his .38 pistol. He fired back at Richardson. He shot several times. One of Abay's bullets hit Richardson in the thumb. Another bullet shattered the glass in the front doors of the liquor store. While the shooting was happening, Michael Ellison did not run. Instead, he reached into the cash register. He took money out of it. Then he also took Abay's .25 caliber pistol. That pistol was kept behind the cash register. Ellison took that gun as well. After the shooting and the robbery, the 3 men fled. They got back into the car. James Richardson drove the car away from the store. While he was driving, he handed his own .25 caliber pistol to James McHenry. McHenry took the gun and put it into the glove compartment of the car. Gerald Abbey was left on the floor behind the counter of his store. He had been shot in the neck and chest. He died from those wounds. The three men left behind a scene with broken glass, blood on the floor near the front door, and a dead store owner. Richardson's blood was also at the scene because he had been shot in the hand. Abbey's .38 pistol was found near his body. After the crime, the men abandoned the car. Inside the car, there was blood on the steering wheel, on the front door handle, on the door panel, and on the carpet on the driver's side. The murder weapon was in the glove compartment. James Richardson had a gunshot wound to his hand. He needed medical attention. That wound would later become important. At the time of the crime, no one was arrested yet. No police investigation had been completed. But the evidence was left behind, and the trail was just beginning. After the shooting, the three men left the car behind. The car was abandoned. Not long after the crime, a man named Don Sullivan was traveling to the crime scene. Don Sullivan was a fingerprint examiner. While he was driving, he saw a car that was abandoned. The car matched the description of the getaway car that had been broadcast on police radio. Sullivan stopped and approached the car. He looked inside. He saw blood on the steering wheel. He saw blood on the front door handle. He saw blood on the door panel. He also saw blood on the carpet on the driver's side. These were clear signs that someone injured had been driving that car. Sullivan checked the car for fingerprints. On the front door handle, he found a fingerprint. That fingerprint was matched to James Richardson. Then Sullivan opened the glove compartment. Inside, he found a .25 caliber pistol. That pistol was the murder weapon. On that pistol, there was a thumbprint. That thumbprint matched James McHenry, one of the accomplices. While the fingerprint examiner was finding these clues, a Navarro County Sheriff's deputy was looking for Richardson. The deputy found him. When the deputy saw Richardson, his left hand was wounded. The hand was wrapped in a bloody towel. The deputy arrested Richardson right away. He then took Richardson to the hospital to get treatment for the gunshot wound. The deputy kept the bloody towel. He put it in a bag and sent it to a laboratory for testing. At the hospital, a doctor named Grady Shaw treated Richardson's gunshot wound. The doctor recorded what he saw. That medical record later became evidence. Meanwhile, the two accomplices, Michael Ellison and James McHenry, began to talk. Both of them gave information to the police. They told the police where to find Abbey's .25 caliber pistol and some of the stolen money. The police recovered those items. Forensic experts tested the blood found in the getaway car. They matched that blood to James Richardson. The blood in the car was his. A doctor named Vincent Matthews performed an autopsy on Gerald Abbey. Dr. Matthews was the deputy chief medical examiner for Dallas County. He determined that Abbey died from the gunshot wounds to the neck and chest. Dr. Matthews found 2.25 caliber bullets inside Abbey's body. He removed those bullets and sent them for testing. A firearms examiner named Larry Fletcher did the testing. He took the .25 caliber pistol that was found in the glove compartment. He fired test rounds from that pistol. Then he compared those test rounds to the 2 bullets taken from Abbey's body. The bullets matched perfectly. They were fired from the same gun. On February 12, 1987, James Richardson was indicted for capital murder. Capital murder means murder that happens during another serious crime like robbery. The state said Richardson killed Gerald Abbey while robbing the liquor store. Richardson went to trial for the first time. On April 21, 1987, the jury found him guilty of capital murder. They sentenced him to death. But the case did not end there. The Texas Court of Criminal Appeals looked at the case. The court found a problem. The court reporter had lost a part of the trial transcription. Without that part, the appeals court could not be sure the trial was fair. So the court reversed the conviction. That meant Richardson would get a new trial. A second trial was held. On November 1, 1988, The jury again found Richardson guilty of capital murder. The jury again sentenced him to death. This time, the conviction was upheld on appeal. But Richardson continued to fight. He filed appeals in state and federal courts. Several times, his execution was set and then stopped by court orders. While Richardson was waiting in jail for his trials, he committed more crimes. He smuggled 2 hacksaw blades into the Navarro County Jail. He tried to escape using those blades. He also sexually assaulted another inmate. He threatened that inmate with more assaults if he told anyone. On May 23, 2000, the legal fights were over. James Davis Richardson was taken to the death chamber in Huntsville, Texas. He was strapped to a gurney. He was given a lethal injection. Before the drugs took effect, he made a final statement. He prayed. He said, "Heavenly Father, I truly repent, really I do. I ask you lift me up, you bring me home, and hold my family safe." He then said, "Dear Heavenly Father, please bring me home." He became unconscious and was pronounced dead 10 minutes later. He was 32 years old. Michael Ellison and James McHenry, the 2 accomplices, did not receive the death penalty. Both of them received life sentences in prison. Gerald Abay, the store owner, died from his wounds on the night of December 17, 1986, and his killer was executed 14 years later. Story 2. Richard Donald Foster was born on August 16, 1952. He was a white male. He grew up in the United States in a regular family. His parents raised him as a normal child. For most of his young life, he did not get into serious trouble with the law. When Richard became a young man, he was sent to fight in the Vietnam War. He served his country as a soldier. He was in Vietnam for a period of time. Then, in 1972, he returned home to the United States. After he came back from Vietnam, Richard changed. He started using drugs. He could not stop. His father later said that Richard had been a fine person before he went to war. But after he returned home, the drugs became a problem for him. Richard tried to get help for his drug problem. He looked for treatment, but the drugs still caused him trouble. In 1975, Richard was put on probation for credit card abuse. That means he broke the law by using a credit card that was not his. He did not go to prison right away, but he did not follow the rules of his probation, so his probation was taken away. In June 1976, Richard committed 3 aggravated robberies. The first one was on June 16th. The second one was on June 21st. The third one was on June 22nd. These were serious crimes where he used force or threats to take property from people. He was caught and convicted for these robberies. He received a total sentence of 18 years in prison. He served time for these crimes. By 1982, Richard was out of prison on parole. Parole means he was released early, but had to follow rules. In August 1982, he met a woman named Kathy Nievar. They soon started living together in Irving, Texas. They lived as boyfriend and girlfriend. They stayed together for more than 1 year. In December 1983, Richard and Kathy broke up. They stopped living together. After that, Richard did not see Kathy for several months. He started spending time with another woman named Vicky Easterwood. They drove around together in Richard's car. The car was a Chevrolet. It was red on the bottom and white on the top. It had a white vinyl roof. Richard was still on parole during this time. He had been out of prison for more than 2 years. But he was not working a steady job. He moved from place to place. He kept bad company. He still had problems from his past. He was a Vietnam veteran who had never fully recovered from his drug use. He had a criminal record, and he was about to do something much worse. On April 4, 1984, Richard Foster was with a woman named Vicky Easterwood. They were driving his car. The car was a Chevrolet 2-door. It was red on the bottom and white on the top. It had a white vinyl roof. The license plate number was GPW 857. Richard started his shift of criminal activity late that night. He did not have a plan to work a regular job. Instead, he was looking for money. At around 4 a.m. on April 5, 1984, a sheriff's deputy named H.L. Rice was on patrol. He was driving on State Highway 199 near a town called Azle. The deputy saw Richard's car parked on the side of the road. The car was on the Southern Service Road. It was parked east of a bar called the Hobnob Bar. The deputy stopped to check the car. There were two people inside, Richard Foster driving and Vicky Easterwood in the passenger seat. The deputy asked for identification. Richard gave the deputy his Texas driver's license. The deputy looked at it and gave it back. The deputy spoke with Richard for about 3 minutes. Then the deputy left and continued his patrol. The car was parked about 15 miles away from the town of Springtown. Nothing seemed wrong at that moment, so the deputy drove away. After the deputy left, Richard stayed in the area. He did not go home. He waited. At 7:15 a.m. on April 5, 1984, a man named Gary Michael Cox woke up. He took a shower. He got a cup of coffee. He left his wife and his 9-day-old baby daughter at home. He drove to his store. The store was a combination feed store, convenience store, and gas station. It was located 1 mile from his home and 2 miles west of Springtown, Texas. Gary had leased this store just 4 days earlier, on April 1st. That morning, he took $300 in cash with him to open the store. At around 7:30 a.m., a customer named Kenneth Davis drove to Gary's store. When Kenneth arrived and got out of his truck, he saw a car parked at the store. The car was clean. It was an older model General Motors car. It was red with a white half-vinyl top. Kenneth walked into the store. As soon as he entered, he heard a very loud explosion. He was startled and yelled out, "Hey!" He stood still for a moment. Then he saw a man across the store. The man had a shotgun. The man pointed the shotgun at Kenneth and said, "Man, you better get the hell out of here." Kenneth said, "I'm leaving." He turned around and ran out of the store. Kenneth ran toward a nearby house. The house belonged to a man named Zach Leatherwood. Zach had leased the store to Gary. As Kenneth ran, he saw Zach outside. Kenneth yelled to warn Zach about what was happening at the store. Kenneth reached Zach's fence gate. Then he turned to look back at the store. He saw the red and white car leave the store area. The car drove west on Highway 199. At the same time, Zach Leatherwood was walking down toward the feed store. As he got close to the back of the store, he heard a gunshot. Then he saw Gary Cox fall. Gary had been shot. He fell right out of the store. Zach later said that Gary's neck was badly damaged by the shot. Zach ran back to his house to get his own shotgun for protection. When he returned to the store, he checked Gary's body. Gary was dead. Zach then went inside the feed store. He saw the cash drawer was open. Change was scattered on the counter. A $5 bill was lying on the counter. But the cash drawer was empty. The money was gone. What happened inside the store was this. Richard Foster had come into the store with a sawed-off shotgun. A sawed-off shotgun is a shotgun with a shorter barrel, which makes it easier to hide and use in close spaces. Richard pointed the gun at Gary Cox. He demanded money. Gary gave him the cash from the drawer. The total amount taken was about $250 to $300. Then, even after getting the money, Richard shot Gary once in the back of the head with the shotgun. The wound was fatal. Gary died immediately. Richard then ran out of the store. He got back into his red and white Chevrolet. He drove away west on Highway 199. Vicky Easterwood was likely still in the car or waiting nearby. At around 7:40 or 7:45 a.m., another customer named Linda Morgan arrived at the store to buy milk. As she was leaving the parking lot, she passed a General Motors car with a cream-colored vinyl top. She saw the driver. He was a white male with a beard. He was wearing a toboggan-type hat. That driver was Richard Foster. Richard did not go home after the shooting. He drove away from Springtown. He met up with Vicky Easterwood. Together, they went to a rural area. Richard wanted to get rid of the shotgun and the clothes he had worn. He found a stock tank. A stock tank is a small man-made pond used for watering livestock. It was located in a rural part of Wise County, south of Farm Road 1810, about 1.5 miles east of the Wise and Jack County line. Richard took a satchel, which is a type of bag. He put items of clothing into the satchel. He also put 1.12 gauge shotgun shell into the satchel, and he put the sawed-off shotgun into the satchel. Then he threw the satchel into the stock tank. He believed the water would hide the evidence. After hiding the gun, Richard continued to move around. He did not stay in one place. He knew that the police would eventually look for him. He had just killed a man during a robbery. He had taken money. He had left witnesses who saw his car and his face. But for now, he was still free. After the murder of Gary Cox on April 5, 1984, the Parker County Sheriff's Office began investigating. A chief deputy named Donald Teague was in charge of the case. He interviewed the witnesses. Kenneth Davis and Zach Leatherwood both described the red and white car. Deputy Teague also learned about the earlier traffic stop at 4 a.m. by Deputy Rice. That stop had given police the license plate number GPW 857 and the name Richard Donald Foster. Deputy Teague needed to find the woman who was with Foster that morning. Her name was Vicky Easterwood. On April 28 and 29, 1984, Deputy Teague interviewed Vicky Easterwood. She was first interviewed at the Graham Police Department. Then the interview continued at the Young County Jail. During these interviews, Vicky told the police what she knew. Vicky agreed to show the police where Foster had hidden the shotgun. On April 29th, Sheriff Billy Kane and Deputy James Moody drove with Vicky Easterwood to Wise County. They went to a stock tank south of Farm Road 1810. When they arrived, Vicky made a throwing gesture toward the water. She was showing them where Foster had thrown the satchel. The police did not search the water that same day. They came back later. On May 30th, 1984, a diver named Mark Wade searched the stock tank. He found a satchel at the bottom. Inside the satchel were items of clothing, 1.12 gauge shotgun shell, and a sawed-off shotgun. The shotgun was later tested by a doctor named Nizam Pirwani. He confirmed that this shotgun was capable of causing the wound that killed Gary Cox. On April 29, 1984, the same day Vicky led police to the stock tank, Deputy Teague went to a justice of the peace in Weatherford, Texas. He obtained a capital murder arrest warrant for Richard Foster. The police now had legal permission to arrest him, but they could not find him right away. Richard Foster was not arrested for Gary Cox's murder until May 10, 1984. But he was not found because of the murder investigation. He was found because of another crime he committed. On May 10, 1984, at around 11:45 a.m., Richard Foster entered the Citizens National Bank in Breckenridge, Texas. He was carrying 2 pistols. He yelled that he was taking control of the bank for his own protection. He threatened to kill anyone who did not do what he said. He took 7 hostages. The hostages were 4 men and 3 women. One of the men was a bank vice president named Scott Harris. Foster told the hostages that the police from Parker and Young counties were looking for him because of a murder. The hostage situation lasted for 12 hours. Foster held the 7 people inside the bank for half a day. The FBI got involved. Finally, on May 10th, police and FBI agents arrested Foster at the bank. He was taken into custody. At the time of his arrest, he identified himself as Stony Armadillo. But the police knew who he really was. After his arrest for the bank hostage situation, Foster was charged with capital murder for killing Gary Cox. He went to trial in the 43rd District Court of Parker County, Texas. The trial began in 1985. The jury heard all the evidence. The witnesses who saw Foster at the store, the car with license plate GPW 857, the shotgun found in the stock tank, and Vicky Easterwood's statements. On November 9, 1985, the jury found Richard Foster guilty of capital murder. The murder happened during a robbery, which made it a capital offense. Then the same jury heard evidence about his past. The prosecution showed that Foster had prior convictions for credit card abuse and 3 aggravated robberies from 1976. The jury decided that Foster should receive the death penalty. He was sentenced to death. Foster appealed his conviction. He took his case to the Texas Court of Criminal Appeals. That court affirmed his conviction and death sentence on June 28, 1989. He asked for rehearing, but it was denied on September 20, 1989. He then tried to take his case to the United States Supreme Court. The Supreme Court refused to hear it on March 19, 1990. While Foster was on death row, he was also tried for the bank hostage situation. In July 1986, he was taken to the Stevens County Jail in Breckenridge, Texas, to stand trial on kidnapping charges. On August 3, 1986, Foster escaped from the jail. He used a knife. He was accompanied by a female inmate. The female inmate gave herself up the next day, but Foster ran away. The police searched for him. On August 7, 1986, Foster carjacked a pickup truck from a teenager. He pointed a gun at the teenager and took the truck. The police set up a roadblock. When Foster drove through the roadblock, police shot out the rear tires of the truck. They chased him for several miles. Then they caught him. On August 25, 1986, Foster pleaded no contest to 4 aggravated kidnapping charges from the bank incident. He received 4 life sentences. He also received a 20-year sentence for the escape. For many years, Foster continued to appeal his death sentence. He filed a state habeas corpus application in 1990. It was denied in 1992. He filed a federal habeas corpus petition in 1992. A federal district court denied it in May 1999. He tried to appeal to the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals, but then he changed his mind. In March 2000, during a hearing in federal court, Richard Foster admitted for the first time that he had committed the murder of Gary Cox. He said it was an accident, but he told the court he wanted to stop all appeals. He asked to withdraw his appeal. On April 14, 2000, the Fifth Circuit granted him permission to withdraw his appeal. On May 24, 2000, Richard Donald Foster was executed by lethal injection in Huntsville, Texas. He was 47 years old. Before he received the injection, he said, "I have been crucified with Christ. It is no longer I who lives, but Christ who lives in me." 5 of his friends and relatives watched the execution. Gary Cox's family did not have to relive the crime in court again. Foster became the 216th person executed in Texas since 1976. The case was closed. The story of Richard Donald Foster ends with his death by lethal injection on May 24, 2000, and the memory of his victim, Gary Michael Cox, who was killed on April 5, 1984, for less than $300. Story 3. Charles Adrian Foster was born on September 30, 1948. His mother drank a lot of alcohol while she was pregnant with him. Because she drank so much, Charles may have been born with a condition called fetal alcohol syndrome. This condition can cause brain damage and learning problems. Charles grew up in a poor home. His family did not have much money. There was a lot of alcohol abuse in the house. His parents were often not around. There was also domestic violence. People in the home hit each other. When Charles was a child, he was hurt many times. He was physically abused. He was also sexually abused. He saw his brothers and sisters being abused too. He could not stop it. One of his stepfathers hit Charles on the head with a plank of wood. The blow knocked Charles unconscious. He stayed unconscious for 4 hours. No one took him to a doctor. He was left without any treatment. This head injury caused brain damage. The damage made it harder for him to think and learn. Charles started drinking alcohol when he was only 8 years old. He drank often. Over many years, the alcohol hurt his brain even more. His thinking and memory became worse. Charles went to elementary school. The teachers saw that he had trouble learning. They said he was mentally retarded. That was the word used at the time. He could not understand lessons the way other children did. He could not move up to higher grades. Even so, he stayed in elementary school until he was 15 years old. The head of the school finally sent him to junior high school. The head did this only because Charles was too old and too big to stay in elementary school anymore. Charles was not ready for junior high school work, but he was sent there anyway. As a young man, Charles had jobs. He worked to earn money. He also had run-ins with the police. He was convicted of felonies before. Some of those felonies involved violence or the threat of violence. Charles got married to a woman named Eula May. They lived together in Muskogee, Oklahoma. Their home was a place where they shared their daily lives. Eula May would send Charles to the store. Charles would wait for her to come home. They lived as husband and wife in that house on the streets of Muskogee. That was the life Charles Adrian Foster knew before anything else happened. On April 1st, 1983, a 74-year-old man named Claude Wiley was running his grocery store in Muskogee, Oklahoma. He had owned that store for many decades. He was known for delivering groceries to people who were poor or sick and could not come to the store themselves. Mr. Wiley was a black man like Charles Foster. That day, Eula May Foster, Charles Foster's wife, made a phone call. She called Mr. Wiley's store. She asked him to deliver groceries to the Foster home. Mr. Wiley agreed to make the delivery. He put the groceries in his truck. His truck was an El Camino. He drove to the Foster house. When Mr. Wiley arrived at the house, he brought the groceries inside. Charles Foster was already waiting for him. Charles was standing behind the front door. He was holding a baseball bat. The bat was a Louisville Slugger. It was not new. The bat was older and had a broken handle. Mr. Wiley did not know Charles was there with the bat. He walked into the home. Then Charles came out from behind the door. He started yelling at Mr. Wiley. Charles accused Mr. Wiley of trying to mess with my wife. That meant Charles believed Mr. Wiley was doing something wrong with Eula May. Then Charles pushed Mr. Wiley. Mr. Wiley was 74 years old. He was not strong enough to fight back. Charles lifted the baseball bat and hit Mr. Wiley with it. He hit him many times. He hit Mr. Wiley on the head. He hit him on the face. He hit him on the ear and above the eye. The blows were very hard. Mr. Wiley's skull broke into many pieces. Blood went everywhere. Investigators would later find blood on the walls and on the ceiling of the Foster home. They also found parts of Mr. Wiley's teeth spread around the house. After the beating, Mr. Wiley was still breathing. He was not dead yet. Charles then took a knife. He stabbed Mr. Wiley 3 times in the chest. The stab wounds went deep. After the 3rd stab, Mr. Wiley stopped breathing. Charles then took a blanket. He wrapped Mr. Wiley's body inside the blanket. He carried the body out of the house. He put the body into Mr. Wiley's own El Camino truck. Charles got into the truck and drove away. He drove to a wooded area about 1 mile from the Foster home. There, he left the body. He left it near an abandoned house. Then he drove back home. When Charles returned home, he was gone for about 45 minutes. Then he left the house again 15 minutes later. He was gone this time for about 1.5 hours. When he came back the second time, he had many items that belonged to Mr. Wiley. He had taken them from Mr. Wiley's home. These items included household goods. Later that night, Charles and Eula May got into Mr. Wiley's El Camino truck. They drove away from Muskogee. They left Oklahoma. They drove to Texas. Charles also had cash with him. The cash had come from Mr. Wiley. In Texas, Charles used that cash to buy a Cadillac car. They got rid of Mr. Wiley's El Camino somewhere in Texas. Several days passed. Mr. Wiley had not returned to his store. No one had seen him. On April 11th, 1983, 10 days after the murder, someone found his body in the wooded area near the abandoned house. The body was discovered. The police were called. When police examined the body, they saw the blunt force injuries to the head and face. They saw the stab wounds to the chest. They confirmed that Mr. Wiley had been beaten and stabbed. They also looked for clues. They went to the Foster home. They found blood on the walls and ceiling. They found teeth fragments. They knew a violent crime had happened there. Around this same time, people in the neighborhood noticed that Charles and Eula Mae Foster were gone. They had left suddenly. Their house was empty. This seemed strange to some people, but no one had arrested them yet. The police began looking for the couple. After Mr. Wiley's body was found on April 11th, 1983, the police in Muskogee began a formal investigation. They collected the blood and teeth fragments from the Foster home. They also learned that Charles and Eula Mae Foster had left town. The police put out a search for the couple. 12 days after the murder, on April 13th, 1983, police found Eula Mae Foster in Fort Worth, Texas. They arrested her there. When the police approached the couple, Charles Foster ran away. He escaped. Eula Mae was taken into custody. Charles stayed hidden for 3 more months. Then, in July 1983, police found him in Cuero, Texas. They arrested him there. Both Charles and Eula Mae were charged with murder. They were brought back to Oklahoma to stand trial. The trial began later in 1983. The key witness for the state was Eula Mae Foster. She agreed to testify against her husband. In exchange, the prosecutors reduced her charge. She was no longer charged with murder. Instead, she was charged with being an accessory after the fact. That meant she helped after the crime, but did not plan or do the killing itself. At trial, Eula Mae told the jury what she saw. She said Charles was hiding behind the door with the bat. She said he beat and stabbed Mr. Wiley. She said she did not know Charles planned to kill Mr. Wiley. She also said she never hit or stabbed Mr. Wiley herself. Charles Foster testified in his own defense. He told the jury a different story. He said Eula Mae sent him to a grocery store called Weddell's on the evening of April 1st, 1983. He said he bought the groceries she asked for. Then he waited outside the store because it was raining. He said that around 7:50 p.m., Eula Mae arrived in Mr. Wiley's El Camino truck. She told him she had borrowed the truck. She said they were going to visit her mother in Texas. Charles said he did not know Mr. Wiley had been killed. He said he only found out later. He admitted that he pawned some of Mr. Wiley's belongings, but he said Eula Mae asked him to do that. The jury also heard from a man named Jody Lynch. He had been in jail with Charles. Lynch testified that Charles admitted killing Mr. Wiley and wrapping him in a blanket. Lynch also said Charles threatened to kill Eula Mae and her family. After hearing all the evidence, the jury found Charles Foster guilty of first-degree murder. They also found him guilty of burglary, grand larceny, and larceny of an automobile. The jury then moved to the sentencing phase. They found 3 reasons why Charles should receive the death penalty. First, the murder was especially heinous, atrocious, or cruel. Second, Charles posed a continuing threat to society. Third, Charles had prior felony convictions involving violence. On November 28, 1983, the judge sentenced Charles Adrian Foster to death. He was also sentenced to 90 years in prison for the other crimes. Eula Mae Foster was sentenced separately. She received 3 5-year prison terms. The sentences were to run at the same time, not one after the other. She served only 9 months in prison. Then she was released. Charles Foster appealed his case many times over the next 17 years. In 1986, the Oklahoma Court of Criminal Appeals upheld his conviction and death sentence. He filed more appeals in federal court. In 1999, a judge on the 10th Circuit Court of Appeals wrote that Charles's trial lawyer had done a very poor job. The lawyer never contacted a cashier named Cecile Fuller, who worked at Weddell's grocery store. After the trial, Fuller signed an affidavit saying Charles was at the store at the time he claimed. She said he waited outside and was picked up in a truck like Mr. Wiley's. The appeals judge said the lawyer's performance fell far short of the mark. However, two other judges on the same court voted to deny Charles's appeal. They said Charles did not prove that the outcome would have been different if the lawyer had done better. The United States Supreme Court also rejected his final appeal on May 24, 2000. On May 25, 2000, Charles Adrian Foster was executed at Oklahoma State Penitentiary in McAlester. The method was lethal injection. He had no last statement. He mouthed words from a psalm. He was pronounced dead at 12:16 a.m. He was 51 years old. Mr. Wiley's niece, Donna Maria Loggins, said her family had waited 17 years for the execution. Eula Mae Foster lived the rest of her life as a free woman after her 9 months in prison. Charles Adrian Foster was buried in Oklahoma. The case was closed. Story 4. James Edward Clayton was born on November 30th, 1966. He was born in the state of New York. His family later moved to Texas, though the exact date of the move is not clearly recorded. When James was a teenager, he began to get into trouble with the law. He committed a burglary. He was also caught carrying a firearm. These were serious acts for a young person. Because of these actions, he was removed from his own home. He was sent to a place called the Bowles Home for Children. This was a residential facility for young people who had behavior problems. At the Bowles home, James did not behave well. He had ongoing discipline issues. By the time he was a senior in high school, he had worn out his welcome. That means the staff no longer wanted him to stay there because his bad behavior continued. He had to leave. James also got into trouble at his school. He was caught crawling into the windows of girls' rooms at the school. The school responded by barring him from coming onto the school property for 1 full year. At some point after this, a family allowed James to stay in their home. He stole from that family. He took things that did not belong to him. This was another example of him taking property that was not his. As a young adult, James joined the military. He received training. Part of that training taught him how to kill. He later told people that he was proud of this training. He said that killing was a way for him to release his anger. He said it was the only thing he could do about his angry feelings. James left the military after some time. He moved to the city of Abilene, Texas. He started attending Abilene Christian University. He also became a member of the Reserve Officers Training Corps at Hardin-Simmons University. This program trained students to become military officers. He was also involved in athletics at Abilene Christian University. He was physically strong and active. However, James did not finish his studies. He dropped out of Abilene Christian University a few months before the events that would later take place. At the time of the events that would follow, he was not enrolled in school. James had a girlfriend during this period of his life. In the days leading up to September 17, 1987, that girlfriend was trying to end their relationship. She wanted to break up with him. James became extremely upset about this. He told other people that he wanted to kill his girlfriend. He also said he wanted to kill her parents. He even said he wanted to kill their dog. Lori Michelle Barrett was 27 years old. She worked as an elementary school teacher in Hawley, Texas. She also worked a night job at a Dillard's department store in Abilene, Texas. On the evening of September 17, 1987, she finished her shift at Dillard's. She left the store parking lot between 9 p.m. and 10 p.m. That was the last time any of her coworkers saw her alive. James Edward Clayton lived only half a block away from Lori's home. He knew the area well. On the night of September 17th, he walked to her house. He brought a flat-blade screwdriver with him. He went to a bathroom window on the outside of the house. He used the screwdriver to pry the window open. The scrape marks from the prying were later found on the window frame. The screwdriver was later found on a brick ledge nearby. Once the window was open, Clayton climbed inside. He knocked a tile loose from the sink. Some glass fell into the sink. He left the window slightly ajar. He was now inside Lori's home. At approximately 9:55 p.m., a neighbor who lived near Lori's house heard screams. The screams were loud and went on for some time. The neighbor could hear them even though a rainstorm was happening at the same time. The neighbor armed himself and went outside to look for the source of the screams. He was unable to find where the screams came from. Clayton confronted Lori inside her home. He took control of her. He used a telephone cord to tie her hands and her ankles. He placed a gag over her mouth. He also put a ligature around her neck. These were used to restrain her and keep her quiet. Clayton then took Lori's car keys. He went outside and started her car. He forced Lori into the vehicle. He drove her away from her home. He took her to a rural area in Jones County, which is next to Taylor County where Abilene is located. Clayton had stolen a rifle about 1 week before this night. The rifle was a Winchester .243 caliber. He had taken it from a former roommate's home. He also had .243 caliber ammunition. He brought the rifle with him or had access to it. At the rural location, Clayton stopped the car. He took out the rifle. He shot Lori twice. Both shots went through her body. One shot went through her head. Another shot went through her neck. A third shot hit her left shoulder. These were high-velocity gunshot wounds. They were fatal. After Lori was dead, Clayton wrapped her body in a blanket. He used black electrical wire to secure the blanket around her body. He left her body on the side of a rural road in Jones County. He also left behind a Remington Peters .243 caliber cartridge case near the body. Clayton then drove away in Lori's car. He did not report what he had done. He kept driving the car for several hours. At some point on the morning of September 18, 1987, he crashed the car on East North 16th Street in Abilene. A passerby helped him tow the car. They moved the car to a parking lot at Abilene Christian University. Clayton left the car there. Clayton then told an acquaintance that he had borrowed a car from someone named Lori. The acquaintance saw Clayton driving the car around 11 p.m. on September 17th. The same acquaintance also saw Clayton with the car at the time of the wreck on the morning of September 18th. Clayton returned to his apartment. He took items that belonged to Lori. He removed the license plate from her car. He took mail that had Lori's name on it. He took a belt that Lori had worn on September 17th. He also took an insurance card with Lori Barrett's name on it. He placed the license plate, the mail, and the belt into a trash dumpster outside his apartment. He kept the insurance card inside his apartment. Lori did not return home on the night of September 17th. She did not report to work at the elementary school on the morning of September 18th. Her coworker tried to call her home between 9:30 p.m. and 12:30 a.m. on September 17th. There was no answer. The coworker tried again on the morning of September 18th. Still no answer. The coworker told the school principal. The principal told the school superintendent. The superintendent went to Lori's house. He knocked. No one answered. He asked the neighbors. They had not seen her. He then went to the police to report her missing. When people later entered Lori's home, they found the bathroom window slightly open. They saw the loose tile and the glass in the sink. They saw that her car was missing. They found one earring that Lori had worn on September 17th. They also found a curling iron with its cord cut off. The security chain on the front door had been left latched from the inside, but the window had been pried open. Lori's body remained in the field in Jones County for 12 days. The weather was hot. Her body began to decompose quickly. On September 29, 1987, a hunter found her body. The body was wrapped in a blanket secured with black electrical wire. The body was in an advanced state of decomposition. The coroner later examined the body and found the 2 through-and-through gunshot wounds to the head and neck. The coroner also noted the ligature and gag. Because of the decomposition, the coroner could not say for certain if strangulation also occurred, but the coroner stated that the gunshot wounds were certainly fatal. The cause of death was listed as homicidal violence. Dental records were used to confirm that the body was Lori Michelle Barrett. Lori Barrett's family was worried when she did not come home. They hired a private investigator named William Hurley. Hurley began asking questions. He talked to people who knew James Edward Clayton. One acquaintance told Hurley that he had seen Clayton driving Lori's car on the night of September 17th. The same acquaintance said Clayton told him he borrowed the car from someone named Lori. The police learned that Clayton lived only half a block away from Lori's home. On September 23, 1987, police officers went to Clayton's garage apartment. They told him they were investigating the car accident involving Lori's vehicle. Clayton admitted he had been driving the car without Lori's permission. The police read him his rights. Clayton agreed to let them search his apartment. After the questioning, Clayton refused to go with the officers to the police station. He was then arrested for unlawful use of a motor vehicle. Lori's sister went to the area outside Clayton's apartment. She looked inside a trash dumpster. She found the license plate from Lori's car. She also found mail with Lori's name on it. She found a bag that contained a belt Lori had worn on September 17th and a partially eaten hamburger. These items were collected as evidence. On September 24, 1987, the police obtained a search warrant for Clayton's residence. They went inside and found an insurance card that had Lori Barrett's name on it. This was more evidence linking Clayton to Lori. On September 29, 1987, a hunter found Lori's body in Jones County. The body was wrapped in a blanket and tied with black electrical wire. A cartridge case was found near the body. The police then got another search warrant for Clayton's apartment. They seized a pair of boots, a Winchester .243 caliber rifle, and .243 caliber ammunition. A forensic laboratory examined the rifle and the cartridge case found near the body. The lab determined that the cartridge case had been fired from that specific rifle. The rifle was the murder weapon. Clayton was then charged with murder and capital murder. On December 10, 1987, a grand jury indicted him for capital murder. The indictment said he killed Lori Barrett while committing burglary, kidnapping, and robbery. The trial began in 1988. The jury heard testimony from witnesses. The neighbor who heard screams on the night of September 17th testified. The acquaintance who saw Clayton driving Lori's car testified. The police officers explained what they found in the dumpster and in Clayton's apartment. The forensic expert explained that the rifle matched the cartridge case. The coroner explained the gunshot wounds and the cause of death. The prosecution also presented evidence about Clayton's statements before the murder. He had told people he was trained to kill. He said killing was the only way to vent his anger. He said he wanted to kill his girlfriend and her parents. He described how he would kill someone with an ice pick. He said he considered himself a good burglar. He said his mind was criminally oriented and he would never get caught. He had stolen the rifle from a former roommate about 1 week before the murder. Clayton pleaded not guilty. His defense argued that he did not commit the murder, but the evidence against him was strong. On November 3, 1988, the jury found James Edward Clayton guilty of 3 counts of capital murder. The trial then moved to the punishment phase. The jury had to decide whether Clayton would receive life in prison or the death penalty. After about 3 hours of deliberation, The jury sentenced him to death. On November 10, 1988, the trial judge formally sentenced Clayton to death by lethal injection. Clayton appealed his conviction and sentence automatically to the Texas Court of Criminal Appeals. On January 27, 1993, that court affirmed his conviction and sentence. He then asked the United States Supreme Court to hear his case. On October 4, 1993, the Supreme Court denied his request. Clayton continued to file appeals for many years. He asked for help from federal courts. He asked for investigative and forensic help to try to prove his innocence. His requests were denied at various levels. On April 3, 2000, the United States Supreme Court again denied his petition. While on death row at the Ellis Unit in Texas, Clayton was involved in an escape attempt. On Thanksgiving night in 1998, he and 6 other inmates tried to break out. One inmate escaped, but was shot by guards and later found dead. Clayton and the other 5 surrendered. On May 25, 2000, James Edward Clayton was executed by lethal injection at the Huntsville Unit in Texas. He was 33 years old. His last meal was 3 fried chicken breasts, a lettuce and cucumber salad with light vinegar dressing, and a pitcher of ice water. Before he died, he said he wanted to follow Christ's example and leave with peace in his heart and forgiveness. He said there was no anger in his heart. He maintained that he was innocent. He was pronounced dead at 6:17 p.m. He became the 217th person executed in Texas since 1976. Lori Barrett's family witnessed the execution. Her stepfather said Clayton lived too long and died too easy. Her brother said he did not forgive Clayton. Her mother broke into tears and said what happened to her daughter was terrible. The case was closed. James Edward Clayton was buried. Lori Michelle Barrett's name remained on the memorial of a young teacher whose life was taken in 1987. Story 5. Robert Earl Carter was born on March 7, 1966. He was a black male. He grew up in Texas. There is very little public information about his parents or his early childhood. The court records do not describe where he went to school or what his home life was like as a young boy. As a young adult, Robert Earl Carter found work in the Texas prison system. He became a state prison guard. He worked at a facility in Navasota, Texas. This job gave him a steady income and a position of authority. He was trusted by the state to watch over inmates. Carter got married to a woman whose nickname was Cookie. Her full name was Teresa Ray Carter. They lived together in a house in or near Somerville, Texas. Carter and his wife had a normal marriage. They went to work and came home. They had friends and family in the area. Before his marriage to Cookie, Carter had a relationship with a different woman. Her name was Lisa Davis. Lisa Davis lived with her mother, Bobby Davis, in a house in Somerville. From that relationship, Carter had a son. The son's name was Jason Davis. Jason was born around 1988. By the time of the events in this story, Jason was 4 years old. Carter did not live with Lisa Davis or his son Jason. Instead, he paid money to help support the child. He voluntarily sent Lisa Davis $100 every month for Jason's care. This was not ordered by a court. Carter chose to pay this amount. He did this for some time without any legal agreement. Lisa Davis lived in her mother's house with several other people. Bobby Davis was the grandmother. She was 45 years old. Nicole Davis was Bobby's daughter and Lisa's sister. Nicole was 16 years old. Bobby also took care of her grandchildren. These were Denitra Davis, age 9, Brittany Davis, age 6, Leah Aaron Davis, age 5, and Jason Davis, age 4. So the house had 6 people living in it: Bobby, Nicole, Denitra, Brittany, Leah Aaron, and Jason. Lisa Davis also lived there, but she worked at a job outside the home. On August 6, 1992, Lisa Davis went to court. She filed a paternity suit against Robert Earl Carter. A paternity suit is a legal request to prove that a man is the father of a child. Lisa wanted the court to officially say that Carter was Jason's father. Once paternity was established, the court could order Carter to pay more child support. Lisa wanted more money than the $100 per month that Carter was giving her voluntarily. On August 14, 1992, a court official served Carter with the paternity lawsuit papers. This means someone gave Carter the legal documents in person. Carter now knew that Lisa was taking him to court. He also knew that he might have to pay more money every month for Jason's care. Carter was not happy about this. He was concerned about the extra financial burden. At this time, Carter was still working as a prison guard. He still lived with his wife Cookie. He had a car. He had a home. But he also had a legal problem now. The paternity suit was moving forward. A court date would be set. Carter would have to respond. That was the situation in Carter's life in the middle of August 1992. He had a job, a wife, a son, and a new lawsuit. He knew that soon he would have to pay more money each month for Jason. He did not want that, but the law was now involved. For days after Carter was served with the paternity papers, he decided to act. The date was August 18, 1992. It was very early in the morning, before sunrise. Carter got into his car. He drove to the Davis home in Somerville, Texas. The house belonged to Bobby Davis. Inside were 6 people: Bobby, Nicole, Denitra, Brittany, Leah, Aaron, and Jason. Jason was Carter's 4-year-old son. Lisa Davis, Jason's mother, was not at home. She was working at her job during these early morning hours. Carter did not go alone. He brought another man with him. That man was named Anthony Graves. Anthony Graves was the cousin of Carter's wife, Cookie. Carter and Graves drove together to the Davis house. Carter brought weapons. He had a hammer. He also had a .22 caliber handgun, a type of small pistol. Graves brought a knife. When they arrived, Carter and Graves entered the house. The exact order of events was later described by Carter himself. He said that upon entering, he hit Bobby Davis with the hammer. Then Graves started stabbing her with the knife. Bobby was stabbed many times. The autopsy later showed that she was stabbed at least 29 times in the head and neck. Every one of those stab wounds went deep enough to enter her brain. While this was happening, Nicole Davis, age 16, came out of a room. She saw Carter and Graves. She recognized Carter. Because she knew who he was, Carter decided he had to stop her from escaping or calling for help. He chased Nicole into a bedroom. Once she was inside the bedroom, Carter shot her with the .22 pistol. He shot her 5 times in the head. He also stabbed her in the head and chest. Nicole died from these wounds. After Nicole was dead, Carter went through the rest of the house. He found the 4 young children. Denitra was 9. Brittany was 6. Leah Aaron was 5. Jason, his own son, was 4. Each of these 4 children was stabbed multiple times. The autopsies later showed that each child was stabbed between 7 and 13 times in the head and chest. Jason was found under a blanket or pillow. He had been stabbed while he was hiding or trying to protect himself. Once all 6 people were dead, Carter went back outside to his car. He had brought a container of gasoline. He took the gasoline can out of his car. He re-entered the house. He poured gasoline on Bobby Davis's body and on the living room floor. Then he went to the bedroom where Nicole's body was. He poured gasoline on her body and on another body that was in that room. Then he went to the other 2 bedrooms. In each bedroom, he poured gasoline on the bodies of the children. He also poured gasoline on the floors and furniture. He made sure that every room had fuel to burn. After pouring the gasoline, Carter lit the fire. The fire spread quickly. It burned the bodies and the house. The fire caused a lot of damage. The flames were hot and intense because gasoline was used. Carter tried to get out of the house after lighting the fire. As he ran toward the front door, the flames caught him. He suffered burns on his body. Specifically, he got second-degree burns on his left palm, on both of his ears, and on his nose. Second-degree burns are serious burns that blister and damage the deeper layers of skin. Carter and Graves left the scene. They got into Carter's car and drove away. On the drive, Carter noticed that his car had blood on it. The blood had come from the victims. Carter used gasoline to clean the blood off the car. Gasoline is a strong cleaner that can remove blood stains. Later that morning, Carter gathered up the clothes he had been wearing during the murders. He also gathered the weapons, the hammer, the knife, and the .22 pistol. He drove to a rural area, a place in the countryside away from houses. He burned his clothes at one location. Then he went to separate locations and threw away the pistol, the knife, and the hammer. He disposed of each weapon in a different place, so they would not be found together. Carter then went to his own home. He wanted to hide the fact that he had been burned in the house fire, so he created a fake accident. He went outside to his yard. He poured a small amount of gasoline on a patch of grass near his front porch. The patch was very small, only 6 inches wide and 3.5 feet long. He lit the gasoline on fire. Then he threw himself onto the small fire. He did this to make it look like he had burned himself while mowing his lawn. This was a lie to cover up the real cause of his burns. Later that same day, August 18th, Carter went to see a doctor. The doctor's name was Mark English. Carter told the doctor that he had been mowing his lawn. He said he had thrown some gasoline on some grass to burn it. He claimed the fire blew up in his face. The doctor treated Carter's burns on his left palm, both ears and nose. The doctor noted that the burns were recent and second degree. The firefighters had responded to the house fire in Somerville that morning. They found the 6 bodies inside. The fire had caused extensive damage to the home and to the victims' bodies. The firefighters and local authorities could see that the fire had been set on purpose. Someone had poured a liquid like gasoline in each bedroom and in the living room, and also on each body, before lighting the fire. Carter now had burned bandages on his face and hand. He had a story about a lawn mowing accident. But that story was false. The real events of that night involved 6 murders, a fire, and a cover-up. The fire at the Davis home was reported in the early morning hours of August 18, 1992. Firefighters arrived and put out the flames. Inside the house, they found the 6 bodies. They saw that the fire had been started on purpose because there was a strong smell of gasoline, and the burn patterns showed that liquid fuel had been poured in each room. The firefighters called the local police and the Texas Rangers, which are state-level investigators. The police began asking questions. They learned that Lisa Davis, who lived in the house, was at work during the fire. They also learned that Robert Earl Carter was the father of Jason Davis, and that a paternity suit had been filed against him 4 days before the fire. This made Carter a person of interest. On the morning of the fire, Carter's wife, Cookie, went to her job at the Brenham State School. A coworker told Cookie about the fire and the deaths. Cookie became very upset. The coworker called Carter at home to tell him to come pick up his wife. Carter hung up without saying anything. A supervisor then called Carter again. Normally, it took 15 to 20 minutes to drive from Carter's house to the school. But Carter did not arrive for 30 to 45 minutes. When he arrived, he wore a baseball cap pulled down low and a long-sleeved jogging suit. He kept his hands in his pockets. A coworker saw dark marks or splotches on his face. Later that day, Carter went to Dr. English for treatment of his burns. The doctor treated second-degree burns on Carter's left palm, both ears and nose. Carter told the doctor he had burned himself while mowing his lawn and using gasoline to burn grass. On August 19th, the day after the fire, Carter spoke to Lisa Davis. He repeated the same story. He had been burned while mowing his lawn, and the fire blew up in his face. On August 21st, Carter went back to Dr. English's office for a follow-up visit. Cookie went with him. Cookie told a nurse that she did not want Carter's ears to be bandaged. She said he would stand out at the funeral. They planned to attend the next day. The funeral for the 6 victims was held on August 22nd at the local high school gymnasium. Many people attended, including police officers. They saw a man with bandages on his face at the funeral. Photographs and videos were taken. Later, those images were shown at trial to prove that Carter was there with bandages on his face. After the funeral, Carter and Cookie voluntarily drove to the Brenham Department of Public Safety office. Texas Rangers wanted to question Carter about his burns. Carter told them the same story about mowing his lawn and using gasoline. The Rangers then went to Carter's house to check his story. They found a small patch of burned grass near the front porch. The patch was only 6 inches wide and 3.5 feet long. The Rangers saw that such a small fire could not have caused the burns on Carter's face and hands. They returned and told Carter they did not believe him. Carter then agreed to go with the Rangers to their regional office in Houston for more questioning. They questioned him for 3 hours. At first, he stuck to his story, but after 3 hours, he changed his statement. He admitted that his lawn mowing story was a lie. He said it was an excuse. He then gave a taped statement. In that statement, he said he was with Anthony Graves at the Davis house on the night of the fire. He said Graves went inside first. He said he heard a shout, went in, saw Bobby Davis lying in the living room, and heard screams. He said he saw blood everywhere and watched Graves go from room to room. Then he said he saw Graves pouring gasoline everywhere from a can. Carter claimed that he himself was burned inside the house near the front door after the fire was set. He also admitted that he burned his clothes and threw the remains in the trash. On August 23rd, the Rangers searched Carter's home. They found a box of .22 caliber bullets. A fingerprint on the box matched Carter's right thumb. An FBI agent tested the bullets. One bullet that had been removed from Nicole Davis's body had the same chemical makeup as 2 unfired bullets from the box in Carter's home. The agent said they came from the same box or from 2 boxes made on the same day by the same company, Winchester Western. On August 26th, Carter testified before a grand jury. A grand jury decides if there is enough evidence to bring charges. Carter told the grand jurors that he had made up the story he told the Rangers. He added new details, but then confirmed parts of his earlier taped statement. He admitted he was at the murder scene that night. He said he had owned a .22 pistol but claimed it had been stolen 6 months before the murders. He did not report the theft to his wife or to the police. He also admitted that during questioning on August 22nd, he had asked several times to talk to the district attorney to make a deal. While Carter and Graves were held in the Burleson County Jail, another inmate named Gregory Burns was in a nearby cell. Burns later testified that he heard Carter tell Graves, "We shouldn't have done it." He heard Graves respond, "Well, why did you put my name in it?" In September 1992, a grand jury indicted Carter for capital murder. The charge was murdering 6 people during the same criminal event. The case was moved to Bastrop County for trial because of publicity in Burleson County. The trial began in early 1994. On February 8, 1994, the jury found Carter guilty of capital murder. On February 11, 1994, the same jury answered the special questions required for a death sentence. The judge sentenced Carter to death. After Carter was sentenced to death, he testified at Anthony Graves' trial. In that testimony, Carter gave a different version. He said he and Graves went to the house together. He said he was armed with a hammer and a .22 pistol, and Graves had a knife. He said he hit Bobby Davis with the hammer, then Graves stabbed her. He said he chased Nicole into a bedroom and shot her several times. He said he went outside to get the gas can, poured gasoline on Bobby, and in the living room, then went to the bedroom where Nicole was and poured gasoline on her and another body, then went to the two other bedrooms and poured gasoline on the children's bodies. He said he burned himself while trying to flee. He also admitted that after getting Cookie from work, he burned a small patch of grass at his home and threw himself on it to re-burn himself. He admitted cleaning blood off his car with gasoline. He admitted burning his clothes and disposing of the weapons at separate locations. He said he traded in the car he used during the murders a day or two later. He also claimed that while in jail, Graves threatened him, so he told the grand jury that he had lied about Graves. Graves was convicted and also sentenced to death. Carter appealed his conviction automatically. The Texas Court of Criminal Appeals affirmed the conviction and sentence on May 8, 1996. The U.S. Supreme Court refused to hear the case on February 24, 1997. Carter filed a state habeas corpus petition, which was denied on November 19, 1997. He then filed a federal habeas petition, which was denied on March 18, 1999. The Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals affirmed that denial on November 2, 1999. On May 31, 2000, Robert Earl Carter was executed by lethal injection in Huntsville, Texas. He was 34 years old. Before he died, he said he was sorry for the pain he caused. He said, "It was me and me alone. Anthony Graves had nothing to do with it. I lied on him in court. My wife had nothing to do with it." He was pronounced dead at 6:20 p.m. Anthony Graves remained on death row for many years, but was later released after his conviction was overturned. Robert Earl Carter's body was returned to his family, and the case of the 6 murdered people in Somerville, Texas, was closed with his execution. Story 6. James Glenn Robideau was born on March 28, 1949. He was a Native American man. He was born in Oklahoma. His family lived in a small town called Red Rock. His parents were Willis Robideau and his mother. James also had a sister. He grew up in this family. He went to school like other children. There is no public record of major problems in his very early childhood. As James became a teenager and then a young man, he started drinking alcohol. Drinking became a regular habit for him. He would drink often. When he was sober, some people thought he was a nice person. But when he drank, his behavior changed. He became more aggressive. This pattern would continue through his adult life. James got married for the first time. His first wife was named Linda Sue Robideau. They lived together as husband and wife. But the marriage was not peaceful. In March 1978, something terrible happened between them. James strangled Linda Sue. She died from this. He was arrested and charged. In November 1978, James pleaded guilty to second-degree murder for killing his first wife. The court sentenced him to 25 years in prison. However, 15 years of that sentence were suspended. That meant he would not serve the full 25 years. While serving his prison time, James was sent to a community treatment center in Oklahoma City. This was a place where prisoners could live with more freedom while finishing their sentences. But on July 27, 1982, James failed to return to the center. He escaped. He was caught later. In February 1983, he received an additional 1 year in prison for this escape. James was released from prison in September 1984. He had served only about 7 years for killing his first wife. After his release, he got married again. His second wife was named Doris M. Robideau. But this marriage also had problems. They separated at some point. James continued to drink. He continued to have violent outbursts. He did not hold a steady job for a long time. His life was unstable. In the summer of 1985, James met a woman named Nancy Rose Lee McKinney. She was 37 years old. Nancy had 4 children. She worked at a hospital. James and Nancy started a relationship. They decided to live together. Some of Nancy's family members did not like this. One of her sisters met James once and felt something was wrong with him, but Nancy moved in with him anyway. They moved into an apartment in Oklahoma City in August 1985. Nancy stopped showing up for work at the hospital after she moved in with James. She lost her job. Her 4 children were taken away by the state because of problems at home. James was suspected of abusing the children, but this was not proven at the time. Nancy's mother was named Carmen McKinney. Nancy and her mother used to talk on the phone 2 or 3 times every week. They were close, but in early September 1985, Carmen noticed something strange. She had not heard from her daughter since September 10th. This was not normal. Carmen began to worry. She did not know where Nancy had gone. On September 22, 1985, Nancy McKinney was still living with James Robdos in their Oklahoma City apartment. That morning, around 10 a.m., a neighbor named Barbara Jones saw Nancy for the last time. Nancy was taking trash to the dumpster. This was a normal thing for her to do. Nothing seemed unusual. That evening, between 9 o'clock and 10 p.m., the neighbors who lived directly below Nancy and James returned to their own apartment. Their names were Barbara and Bobby Jones. Shortly after they got home, around 10 p.m., they heard a loud noise coming from the apartment above them. The noise sounded like someone was jumping off furniture onto the floor. The noise was so loud that the Jones apartment shook. The noise continued for several hours. It did not stop until about 1 a.m. in the morning. At first, the loud noises happened every few minutes. Then the time between noises became longer. Barbara Jones could tell the difference between James' heavy footsteps and Nancy's softer footsteps. After that night, Barbara never heard Nancy's footsteps again. About 1 week before this night, Barbara had heard James and Nancy arguing. During that argument, Barbara heard Nancy say, "Don't hit me anymore." The next day, Monday, September 23, 1985, Barbara Jones heard a noise outside her door near a storage closet. A few minutes later, she saw James wearing light blue pants or jeans. He went up the stairs to his apartment. Later that morning, around 10 a.m., Barbara saw James leave the apartment in a blue Ford car. That car was usually driven by Nancy. On Tuesday, September 24, 1985, Bobby Jones saw James coming out of his apartment at 12:25 p.m. James was carrying 2 small dark-colored trash bags. He had 1 bag in each hand. Later, James apologized to Bobby Jones for being noisy. James said he did drink alcohol, and he had a tendency to get loud. But James did not say he was sorry for any specific night. He did not mention the night of September 22nd. Around September 28, 1985, the Joneses saw James putting a red and white carpet cleaning machine into the back of a white pickup truck. Earlier that same day, Barbara Jones had heard the sound of a carpet cleaner or vacuum coming from the upstairs apartment for about 2 hours. James was cleaning the carpet. On September 25, 1985, Nancy's mother, Carmen McKinney, posted a note on Nancy's apartment door. The note asked Nancy to call her. Carmen had not heard from her daughter since September 10th. She was worried, but Nancy did not call. On September 26, 1985, James went to a pawn shop with a woman named Joanne Robinson. James wanted to redeem some tapes that he had pawned. He asked Joanne to sign for the tapes. He said there had been a lady with him when he pawned them. Joanne signed Nancy McKinney's name to get the tapes back. James did not tell Joanne that Nancy was dead. On September 27, 1985, James and Joanne Robinson went to a store called Otasco. They rented a carpet cleaning machine called a rug doctor. James used this machine to clean the apartment carpet. In late September 1985, James met a woman named Patricia Avery at a club called Marie's Club. The meeting happened either on September 21st or September 28th. James moved in with Patricia the following Monday. He lived with her for about 2 weeks. During that time, James took Patricia to the apartment where he had lived with Nancy. He told Patricia to wait in the pickup truck while he went upstairs. He stayed in the apartment for 10 or 15 minutes. Then Patricia went up to help him carry down his stereo. Before she entered, James warned her that there would be a bad smell. He said he had left some meat out and it spoiled. When Patricia walked in, she smelled a very bad, gagging odor. But she did not see any food or garbage left out in the apartment. On October 11th, 1985, James moved out of the apartment for good. He was seen carrying boxes to the trash dumpster. He also took his belongings. Around this time, the owner of the apartment building, a man named A.D. Smedley, had already noticed dark spots on the wall of a closet and a dark stain on the carpet. These looked like blood. Smedley had the lock changed on October 9th. When James was allowed to get his clothes on October 11th, Smedley noticed that the stains on the wall had been wiped clean and the carpet was wet. James had cleaned up evidence. On October 18th, 1985, James met a woman named Lisa Gale Austin. She started living with him that same day. They lived together until James was arrested. About 1 month later, around mid-November, James told Lisa that he had killed Nancy. He said he killed her and cut her up. He also said he buried her. He told her this at a club on November 14th, 1985. Later that same night, when they returned home, James was drunk and angry. He choked Lisa and pushed her down some stairs. Neighbors heard the disturbance and called the police. On November 19th, 1985, James committed another violent crime. His second wife, Doris M. Robdos, was separated from him at the time. But James told Doris he wanted to try to get back together. Doris agreed to meet him. When they met, James attacked her. He choked her. He beat her so badly that she suffered a broken nose and a fractured eye socket. This was not the first time James had choked a woman. He had choked his first wife to death in 1978. He had choked Lisa Austin just days before this attack on Doris. After James killed Nancy, he did not leave her body whole. He used a saw with a thin blade. He also used a knife or a machete. The medical examiner later estimated that dismembering a body would take about 4 to 5 hours. James cut Nancy's body into pieces. He placed the body parts into trash bags. He then drove to areas outside the city. He dumped the bags into creeks. One of these creeks was Coon Creek in far north Oklahoma City. Another was the Deep Fork River near Wellston. The water and animals would scatter the remains. Nancy's left leg was later found by 2 boys playing in a creek. Her skull was later found in a rural yard, dragged there by a dog. Her arm was later found in another creek. The rest of her body was never found. Nancy's mother and brother wanted to give her a proper burial, but there was not much left to bury. On August 20th, 1985, before Nancy was killed, her mother Carmen McKinney had already reported her missing. But at that time, Nancy was still alive. After September 22nd, Carmen continued trying to find her daughter. She visited the apartment. She found no sign of Nancy. She did see a rented carpet cleaner. The apartment owner, A.D. Smedley, also grew suspicious. He found dark stains on the carpet and walls. He called the police. On October 15th, 1985, Smedley went back to the apartment with police officers. When they stepped inside, they were met with a foul odor. It smelled like spoiled meat. The officers removed some carpeting and part of the carpet pad. On October 24th, Smedley and an employee pulled back more carpet in the bedroom. They found more stains. Police came again. They removed the entire bedroom carpet. They also took pieces of the carpet pad. On October 25th, a carpet layer named John Fox removed the remaining carpet. The smell was so bad that he wrapped his t-shirt around his face and went outside to vomit. The police sent the carpet pad, and the towels found in the dumpster to a lab for testing. They also took a pair of jeans belonging to James. They took the seat cover from his pickup truck. The tests showed human blood. The blood was type A. Nancy McKinney had type A blood. James Robdo's had type O blood. The blood found on the carpet, the jeans, and the seat cover could not have come from James. It came from someone with type A blood. That matched Nancy. On November 14th, 1985, police detectives Eric Mullenix and his partner talked to James. They read him his rights. James told them that Nancy had left the apartment around the 1st of September. He said she took all her belongings while he was visiting his parents. He said they had arguments, but he never hit her. He said he had not been injured in the apartment and did not know of anyone bleeding heavily there. He said he cleaned the carpet because he spilled red Kool-Aid and some oil. The detectives told James they believed he caused Nancy's death. James denied it, but later that afternoon he hung his head, began crying, and asked to speak to his father. The detectives tried to call James's father. On the morning of November 15th, 1985, 2 investigators came to talk to James again. One was from the Noble County Sheriff's Department. The other was from the Bureau of Indian Affairs. James was read his rights again. This time, he changed his story. He said he had not seen Nancy since the first week of September, but he admitted they had 2 or 3 fights. He said he hit her several times. He said he did a number on her when he hit her in the temple and in the face. He said a ring he was wearing struck her in the head. He said she bled so much that the carpet was soaked. He said she hit him back and split his lip. He said they were both drinking. He did not admit to killing her, but he admitted to beating her severely. Later that same day, November 15th, 1985, police arrested James at his home in Oklahoma City. Nancy's body had not been found yet. The charge was based on the blood evidence. On December 28th, 1985, 2 boys were playing on a pipe across the Deep Fork River near Wellston, Oklahoma. One boy saw a dog chewing on an object. When he looked closer, he saw it was a human leg. The leg was found and taken to the medical examiner. On February 3, 1986, a man named David Haben lived on a ranch in South Logan County. He found an object in his front yard. It had been lying there for about a month. It was a human skull. A dog had apparently dragged it to the yard. The state medical examiner's office compared x-rays of Nancy's skull with the found skull. They matched. The skull was Nancy's. On February 15, 1986, Nancy's brother was helping search for her body. He found an arm with a hand attached in the middle of Coon Creek bed. This was about a quarter-mile west of David Haben's house. No other body parts were ever found. Dr. Larry Balding from the medical examiner's office and Dr. Clyde Snow, a forensic anthropologist, examined the skull, leg, and arm. They confirmed the remains were Nancy's. Dr. Balding testified that he could not determine the exact cause of death from the 3 body parts. But because the body had been dismembered, he believed it was a homicide. The cut marks on the leg bone were squared off. That was consistent with a saw with a thin blade. James was charged with first-degree murder in December 1985. His trial began in June 1986 in Oklahoma County. The jury heard testimony from the neighbors, the apartment owner, the carpet layer, and the police. They heard from Lisa Austin, who said James told her he killed Nancy and cut her up. They heard from the medical examiner and the anthropologist. The defense brought witnesses who said James was in bars on the night of September 22nd, playing drums with a band until late. The defense also said James had a diabetes and alcohol problem that made him not know what he was doing. James did not testify in his own defense. The jury was not told during the trial that James had previously pleaded guilty to strangling his first wife to death. That information was kept out. But during the punishment phase, after James was convicted, the jury heard evidence of other attacks on women. 2 former girlfriends described how James choked them. Nancy's 13-year-old daughter testified that James choked her until she passed out. The jury also learned about the murder of his first wife. After 90 minutes of deliberation, the jury found James guilty of first-degree murder for killing and dismembering Nancy McKinney. They then recommended the death penalty. The judge sentenced James to death. James told the judge he was innocent. He then began a long series of appeals. He filed a direct appeal to the Oklahoma Court of Criminal Appeals. That court affirmed his conviction and sentence in 1993. He filed a post-conviction relief appeal in 1995. That was also denied. He appealed to higher courts. All appeals failed. On May 23, 2000, the Oklahoma Pardon and Parole Board held a clemency hearing for James. The board voted 4-0 against recommending clemency. The execution was scheduled for June 1, 2000. On the night of May 31, 2000, vigils were held around the state. Shortly after midnight on June 1, 2000, James Glenn Robdos was taken to the execution chamber at the Oklahoma State Penitentiary in McAlester. He was strapped to a table. A white sheet covered him to his chest. The blinds opened so witnesses could see him. James looked up until he saw his father in the witness room. His father gave him a thumbs-up sign. 12 members of Nancy's family also watched. James spoke his last words. He told his father he loved him. He asked his father to tell his mother, his sister, and his children that he loved them. He said he had found salvation. He asked Nancy McKinney's family for forgiveness. His last words were, "God bless you all. I'm going to be all right. I love you." At 12:28 a.m., the warden said, "Let the execution begin." James closed his eyes. Within 1 minute, he took a deep breath and snored once. Then he lost consciousness. At 12:34 a.m., he was pronounced dead. Nancy McKinney's daughter, Tammy, said after the execution that she wished James had suffered more. Nancy's brother, E.J. McKinney, said he had forgiven James. He said justice was carried out. Nancy's remains that were found were cremated. The ashes were held by family members. They planned to sprinkle some of her ashes in a place where she used to spend time with her children. They also planned to put a gravestone for her near Pawnee, Oklahoma. James Glenn Robdos was the 638th person executed in the United States since 1976, and the 26th person executed in Oklahoma since that year. Story 7. Pernell Ford was born in 1965. He was a black male. He grew up in the United States. When Pernell Ford was 6 years old, he started to have serious mental health problems. His family could not take care of him at home for long periods, so he was sent to mental health institutions. He stayed there for many weeks or months at a time. By the time Pernell was 13 years old, doctors were giving him strong medications. These were antipsychotic drugs and antidepressant drugs. He took these medicines to try to control his mental condition. During his teenage years, Pernell tried to kill himself more than once. He tried to overdose on pills. He tried to hang himself. He also tried to poison himself. Each time he survived. Pernell did not finish much school. His formal education was limited. He also took an IQ test. His score was 80. That is below the average range. As a young man, Pernell continued to have mental health struggles. He would go in and out of hospitals. He did not have a stable job or a normal adult life. He also got into trouble with the law at times, but not for violent crimes. By the end of 1983, Pernell Ford was 18 years old. He was not married. He did not have a home of his own. He was moving from place to place. He had no steady income. He was also not taking his mental health medicines regularly. At this time in his life, Pernell needed money. He had no job. He had no family member who could support him. He was alone and looking for a way to get things he could not pay for. That was the state of his life in late 1983. He was a young man with a long history of mental illness, multiple suicide attempts, little education, and no money or home. On December 2nd, 1983, Pernell Ford was 18 years old. He was in Jacksonville, Alabama. He needed money and property. He decided to break into a house to steal things. He chose a house at 417 Goodlett Street in Jacksonville. This was the home of Willie C. Griffith and her daughter Linda Gale Griffith. Willie Griffith was 74 years old. She used a walker because she had arthritis. She was retired. Linda Gale Griffith was 42 years old. She worked as a secretary. Ford went to the house. He found a side door that was not locked. He opened the door and went inside without permission. That is called burglary. His plan was to take things and leave before anyone saw him. But while he was inside, Linda Gale Griffith saw him. She discovered that an intruder was in her home. She tried to stop him from getting away. She tried to prevent his escape. Ford had a knife. When Linda Gale Griffith confronted him, he used the knife on her. He stabbed her multiple times. She was stabbed in the head, neck, and body. Many of the stab wounds were to her back. She fell and died from these wounds. Willie C. Griffith was in the house as well. She was 74 years old and had trouble walking. But she started to make a lot of noise. She was screaming or calling out. According to what Ford later said, she was raising so much cane. That means she was being very loud and would not stop. Ford decided he could not leave her alive. If she kept making noise, neighbors might hear or police might come. So he went to her. He stabbed her multiple times as well. She was also stabbed in the head, neck, and body. Many of her wounds were also to her back. She died from her injuries. The house showed signs of a physical struggle. The two women fought back or tried to get away. But Ford was 18 and strong. They were older or disabled. They could not stop him. After both women were dead, Ford did not leave right away. He looked through the house. He took personal property that belonged to the victims. He took credit cards. He took identification cards. He took a gold necklace. He took a purse. He took a coupon file. He took keys. He also found a .38 caliber pistol that belonged to Linda Gale Griffith. He took that too. Then he went outside. He saw the victim's car. It was a 1978 Chevrolet Caprice. It was tan in color. He got into the car and drove away. He left the two bodies on the floor of the house. Later that evening, around 7:15 p.m., a family friend named Odell McGinnis came to the house. He found the bodies. He called the Jacksonville Police Department. Officers came to the scene. They saw that both women had multiple stab wounds. They saw that the house was messy with signs of a fight. They also saw that property was missing, including the tan Chevrolet. The police started an investigation that night, but they did not know who did it yet. They did not have a suspect. The next day was December 3rd, 1983. Pernell Ford was driving the victim's tan Chevrolet on Interstate 55. He was near Springfield, Illinois. That is far from Alabama. He had driven many hours north. At about 12:30 p.m., Illinois state troopers saw his car. His speed was about 73 miles per hour. The speed limit on that road was 55 miles per hour. So the troopers stopped him for speeding. The troopers were named Steve Gregurick and Loren Cowdery. They asked Ford for his driver's license. He did not have one. He gave them a false name. He said his name was Jesse Willie Griffith. That was a fake name using the victim's last name. The troopers looked inside the car. They saw credit cards with Linda Gale Griffith's name on them. They also saw a loaded .38 caliber pistol. Because Ford had no license and had a gun, they arrested him. They took him to the police headquarters in Springfield. At the station, the troopers found more credit cards and identification documents. These belonged to Linda Gale Griffith and Willie C. Griffith. The officers also saw that Ford's clothes had blood stains on them. His shoes, socks, pants, and shirt all had blood stains. The pants had blood that would later be tested. The troopers also searched the car. Inside they found a cardboard box. The box had a hole in it. The hole looked like it was made by a sharp knife or a similar tool. Around the hole there was a reddish-brown substance. That substance looked like blood. They also found a glove. The glove had a reddish-brown stain on it. The car also contained new clothing that appeared to have been bought recently. The troopers called the Jacksonville Police Department. They told them about the arrest and the items found. The police in Alabama confirmed that the two women had been murdered the night before. So the troopers knew they had caught the killer. Ford agreed to go back to Alabama. He did not fight extradition. That means he did not try to stay in Illinois. Chief Paul Locke from Jacksonville and investigator Charles Winfrey came to Illinois. They took custody of Ford. They also took the car and all the items found inside. Then they brought Ford back to Alabama. On December 10, 1983, 8 days after the murders, Ford gave a confession. He spoke to Chief Paul Locke and Officer Kyle Sanders. First, the officers explained his rights. He said he understood. He agreed to talk. Then he told them everything. He said he entered the house to commit a burglary. He said Linda Gale Griffith saw him and tried to stop him from escaping. So he stabbed her. He said Willie C. Griffith was making so much noise that he killed her too. Then he said he stole property and drove away in their car. That confession was recorded. It became a key piece of evidence. At this point, the crime was solved. Ford was in custody, but the trial had not happened yet. The police had not yet presented all their evidence in court. The case was now moving toward the legal process. After Ford was arrested and confessed, the case went to trial in 1984. The trial took place in Calhoun County, Alabama. The jury was made up entirely of white people. Ford was black. The victims were white. Before the trial started, Ford dismissed his lawyers. He told the court he wanted to represent himself. The judge allowed this. The judge said Ford was competent to act as his own lawyer. This decision was made even though Ford was only 18 years old, had little education, had an IQ of 80, and had a long history of mental health problems. During the trial, Ford did almost nothing to defend himself. He did not give an opening statement. He did not object to any of the prosecution's witnesses. He did not cross-examine anyone. For most of the trial, he sat silently. He seemed withdrawn. The prosecution presented all the evidence. They showed that Ford's fingerprint was found on the glove box of the victim's car. They showed that the glove box contained the .38 caliber pistol that belonged to Linda Gale Griffith. They showed that the blood on Ford's pants matched the victim's blood type and did not match Ford's blood. They showed that the glove found in the car had human blood consistent with the victim's and a hair consistent with Linda Gale Griffith. They also presented Ford's full confession. The jury found Ford guilty of capital murder. That meant he murdered 2 people during a burglary. Under Alabama law, that crime carried a possible death sentence. Then the trial moved to the penalty phase. This is when the jury decides if the convicted person should get life in prison or death. At this point, Ford did something unusual. He put on a white bed sheet. He wore it like a toga. He used a belt and a towel strap to hold it. Then he made a long speech to the court. In his speech, Ford asked the judge to have the coffins of Willie Griffith and Linda Gale Griffith brought into the courtroom. He said that if the coffins were brought in, God would raise the 2 women from the dead. He said this would happen in front of the jurors. The judge did not grant this request. The jury recommended the death penalty. The judge agreed and sentenced Ford to death by electrocution. After the sentence was read, the judge told Ford that he would receive an automatic appeal because of state law. Ford responded that he did not want an appeal. As officers led him out of the courtroom, he waved to the prosecutor and said, "See you at the electric chair." After the trial, Ford was sent to death row at Holman Prison near Atmore, Alabama. While on death row, doctors diagnosed him with schizophrenia and depression. He was given more medications. He also tried to kill himself again on death row. In March 1998, he had a psychotic episode. He was placed in an isolation cell. He found a knife and cut his own neck and wrists. Over the years, Ford sometimes gave up his appeals. Other times, when his mental health improved, he resumed them. His lawyer, Lawana Davis, tried to help him fight his sentence. But Ford kept changing his mind. In 1997, Ford fired his lawyer. He told the court he wanted to drop all his appeals. He said he wanted to be executed. He wanted the process to move faster. Because of questions about his mental health, the court held a hearing. At that hearing, Ford said unusual things. He said he could leave his death row cell through a method he called translation. He said he had used this method to travel to India. He said he had many wives in India. He also said he had hundreds of thousands of wives in other countries like the Philippines, Colombia, Ecuador, and Spain. He said he had millions of dollars in a Swiss bank account. He said that after he was executed, he would become the Holy Spirit and sit on the left hand of God. He also said he had already visited heaven through translation. Ford admitted that other people thought he was mentally ill, but he said they were wrong. He said his experiences were spiritual, not mental illness. He said he had problems when he was young, but nothing that made him insane. The court had to decide if Ford was competent to fire his lawyer and drop his appeals. The legal standard for competency was low. A psychiatrist found that Ford could make simple decisions, like ordering candy from the prison store. Based on that, a federal appeals court ruled in November 1999 that Ford was competent. He was allowed to drop his appeals. Ford's former lawyer, Lawana Davis, filed a clemency request with the governor of Alabama, Don Siegelman. She pointed to Ford's history of mental problems, but the governor set aside the request. His press secretary said the governor felt the request was not appropriate because the court had already ruled Ford was competent. Ford was scheduled to die on June 2, 2000. The night before, he had his last meal. He ate barbecued ribs, ham, English peas, turnip greens, potato salad, cornbread, and cheesecake. He spent the day with his mother and a prison chaplain. He read from the Bible. He recited the 23rd Psalm. At the time of execution, Ford was 35 years old. He had been on death row for 16 years. The execution method was the electric chair. Just before he died, Ford gave a final statement to the warden, Charlie Jones. He said he wanted to apologize to the family of the victims. He asked the warden to tell them to be safe. Wayne Griffith, the son of Willie Griffith and brother of Linda Gale Griffith, came to watch the execution. He had made a promise to himself during the trial that he would be there. After Ford was pronounced dead at 12:12 a.m., Wayne Griffith said he found peace. He said, "It's finished." He also said he forgave Ford. He said he hoped Ford had gone to heaven. He believed Ford's apology was sincere. The former Calhoun County Sheriff, Roy Sneed, also witnessed the execution. He said that the death penalty might not stop others from killing, but it stopped Ford from ever killing again. Pernell Ford was pronounced dead at 12:12 a.m. on June 2, 2000. He was the 639th person executed in the United States since 1976 and the 4th person executed in Alabama in the year 2000. The story of Pernell Ford ends with his death in the electric chair, while the family of Willie C. Griffith and Linda Gale Griffith walked away from the prison carrying the memory of the two women he had killed 17 years earlier. Story 8. Feltus Taylor was born in 1962 in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. He was an African-American boy. His mother raised him. He also had brothers and sisters. His grandmother, whose name was Henrietta, lived close by. She helped take care of him when he was young. As a child, Feltus grew up in a normal neighborhood. He went to school in Baton Rouge. He was not a top student, but he finished his basic education. He did not go to college. When he became old enough to work, he looked for jobs that did not require a degree. Feltus found work in restaurants. He learned how to cook fried chicken and other fast food. He was a fry cook. This meant he worked with hot oil and cooked chicken, French fries, and similar items. He was not a manager. He was an hourly worker. Over time, Feltus got a job at a fast food restaurant called Cajun's Fabulous Fried Chicken. The restaurant was located on Florida Boulevard in Baton Rouge. His boss was a manager named Keith Clark. Keith Clark was a white male. Keith was in charge of hiring and firing workers. Feltus worked at Cajun's for about 6 months. He did his job, but he was not always good at it. His performance was poor. Keith Clark noticed that Feltus did not do his work well enough. Because of this, Keith fired Feltus from the job. This happened about 2 weeks before the events that would come later. After being fired, Feltus had money problems. He did not have a steady income. He had bills to pay. One of his bills was a car payment of $134. He worried about how he would pay this money. He also had other financial needs. He felt stressed about his situation. Even though Keith Clark had fired Feltus, the two men were still friendly. They did not hate each other. Keith did not hold a grudge against Feltus. Feltus also did not act angry toward Keith. They stayed on good terms. This meant Feltus could still talk to Keith without fighting. Feltus also knew other workers at the restaurant. One of them was a cook named Donna Ponzano. Donna was a white female. She was 31 years old. She worked the morning shift. Feltus had worked with her before he was fired. They were not close friends, but they knew each other from the kitchen. Feltus did not have a criminal record for violence before this time. He had not been in prison for murder or shooting anyone. He was an ordinary young man who had lost his job and needed money. He lived in an apartment near the restaurant. He owned a car. He also owned a .22 caliber handgun and a pair of handcuffs. He kept these items in his car. In the days after he was fired, Feltus thought about how to solve his money problems. He wanted to get his job back. He believed that if Keith Clark rehired him, he could earn money again and pay his bills. He decided he would go to the restaurant and ask Keith to give him another chance. Feltus Taylor went to Cajun's Fabulous Fried Chicken on the morning of March 27, 1991. He arrived around 7 a.m. or shortly after. Donna Ponzano was already inside. She was the cook working the early shift. She had started her work before sunrise. Keith Clark, the manager, had also arrived at 7 a.m. to help Donna open the restaurant for business. Feltus knocked on the front door. The restaurant was not open to customers yet. Keith Clark saw Feltus through the glass. Because Keith and Feltus were still friendly, Keith opened the door and let Feltus come inside. Keith did not think Feltus was a threat. Once inside, Feltus told Keith that he was having financial problems. He asked Keith to rehire him. Keith said no. Keith had already replaced Feltus with another cook. But Keith wanted to help Feltus find a different job. He gave Feltus 35 cents to buy a newspaper. The two men sat together in a restaurant booth. They looked through the classified job advertisements. Keith found an ad for a local Popeyes restaurant. Popeyes was also a fried chicken chain. The ad said they needed a cook. Keith called the Popeyes manager. He recommended Feltus for the job. He made an appointment for 9 a.m. that same morning. Keith planned to go with Feltus to talk to the Popeyes manager. While waiting for 9 a.m., Keith continued his normal morning work. He started putting money into the cash registers. Feltus helped by sweeping the dining area. Everything seemed normal. Then Feltus made a decision. He decided that robbing the restaurant would solve his money problems. He did not tell Keith what he was thinking. He walked to the front door and went outside. He went to his car, which was parked in front of the restaurant. From his car, he took out a .22 caliber handgun and a pair of handcuffs. He put these items in his pockets or hands. Then he walked back to the front door and re-entered the restaurant. Now Feltus acted differently. He grabbed Donna Ponzano. He held the gun to her head. He told Keith Clark to open the restaurant's floor safe. The safe was located in a storeroom toward the back of the building. Keith said no at first, but Feltus threatened to shoot Donna in the head. Keith then agreed to open the safe. Feltus made Keith and Donna walk to the back of the restaurant. Keith tried to escape through a rear door, but the door was locked. He could not get out. Feltus then used the handcuffs to lock Keith and Donna together. They were now attached to each other by the wrists. Keith opened the floor safe. He took out the money inside. The safe contained approximately $800. Keith gave this money to Feltus. Keith tried to talk Feltus out of continuing the robbery. He reminded Feltus that they were friends, but Feltus refused to stop. He said his financial problems were too serious. He mentioned that his car payment of $134 was due. Keith then offered to give Feltus a personal check. He said he would loan him the money or just give it to him. Feltus said no. Feltus told Keith not to call the police after the robbery. Keith said he would not lie to the police. He said he would tell them the truth. After hearing this, Feltus asked Keith again to rehire him. Before Keith could answer, Donna Ponzano spoke. She said she did not want Feltus to be rehired. Keith agreed with Donna. He said no to Feltus again. At that moment, Feltus raised the .22 caliber handgun. He shot Donna Ponzano. He shot her 5 times. The bullets hit her in the head and in her upper forearm. Donna fell to the floor. She was badly wounded but still alive. The gun was now empty. Feltus left the storeroom. He went to another part of the restaurant. He reloaded the gun with new bullets. Then he returned to the storeroom. He shot Keith Clark in the head. He shot him 4 times. Keith fell down. He was still handcuffed to Donna. After shooting both people, Feltus went to the cash registers. He opened them. He took out approximately $580. He put this money with the $800 he had already taken from the safe. In total, he had stolen about $1,380. Feltus then walked to the front door. He got into his car. He drove away from the restaurant. What happened next was not part of the crime itself, but a direct result. Another employee named Viola Caglier arrived for work between 8 o'clock and 8:30 a.m. She saw Feltus's car parked in front. She knocked on the front door. No one answered. She looked through the front windows. She saw Feltus and Keith going into the storeroom. She waited a few minutes. Then she went to the back door. She looked through a small peephole. She saw Feltus leave the storeroom and come back. Then she heard gunshots. Viola ran to a nearby restaurant called Frost Top. She told 2 people there, a worker named Josephine Hookfin and a food salesman named William Johns, about the shooting. Josephine called 911. While she was on the phone, Feltus came out of Cajun's, got in his car, and drove away. William Johns saw the car and read the license plate number. He gave this number to Josephine, who gave it to the 911 operator. Police and emergency medical workers arrived at Cajun's. They went inside. They found Donna Ponzano and Keith Clark lying in the storeroom. They were still handcuffed together. Both had multiple gunshot wounds to the head. Donna was taken to a hospital. She received treatment and surgery, but her wounds were too severe. She died 2 days later, on March 29, 1991. Keith Clark survived his 4 gunshot wounds. However, he suffered permanent injuries. He became partially paralyzed. He also had minor brain damage. Feltus Taylor drove away with the stolen money. He hid the money in a field not far from his apartment. He also took the .22 caliber handgun. He drove to the Mississippi River. He threw the gun into the river. He thought this would destroy the evidence. The police already had the license plate number that William Johns had read from Feltus Taylor's car. They also had a description of the car. They knew that the car belonged to Feltus because he was a former employee of the restaurant. Some officers had seen him before. They also had a report from Viola Cagliar that she had seen Feltus inside the restaurant just before the shooting. On the same day as the shooting, March 27, 1991, the police began searching for Feltus. They went to his apartment. He was not there at first, but later that evening, around 10 p.m., the police found Feltus near his apartment. They arrested him. At that time, Donna Ponzano was still alive in the hospital, so the police charged Feltus with attempted first-degree murder and armed robbery. After the arrest, the police questioned Feltus. He did not try to hide what he had done. He gave a full confession. He told the police exactly what happened inside the restaurant. He told them about the handgun and the handcuffs. He told them he had taken the money from the safe and the cash registers. He then led the police to the field near his apartment. He showed them where he had hidden the stolen money. The police recovered approximately $1,380. Feltus also told the police that he had thrown the .22 caliber handgun into the Mississippi River. The police tried to find the gun, but the river was large and the water moved fast. They could not recover the weapon. However, they did not need the gun to prove the case because Feltus had already confessed. 2 days later, on March 29, 1991, Donna Ponzano died from her gunshot wounds. The police then changed the charges against Feltus. They charged him with first-degree murder instead of attempted murder. He was also still charged with armed robbery. Feltus went to trial in 1992. The trial took place in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. The prosecutors were led by a man named John Sinkfield. Feltus had a lawyer to defend him. During the trial, Feltus did not claim he was innocent. He admitted that he had shot Donna Ponzano and Keith Clark. He admitted that he had robbed the restaurant. His lawyer tried to argue about his mental state and other issues, but the facts of the crime were clear. The jury heard all the evidence. They heard from Keith Clark, who survived and could tell them what happened. They heard from Viola Cagliar, who saw Feltus at the restaurant and heard the gunshots. They heard Feltus's own confession. After listening to everything, the jury found Feltus Taylor guilty of first-degree murder. Then came the penalty phase. The same jury had to decide whether Feltus would receive death or life in prison. The prosecutors presented reasons why the death penalty was appropriate. They said Feltus had committed the murder during an armed robbery. They said he had created a risk of death to more than one person. They also said he had a previous conviction for an unrelated armed robbery, though the details of that earlier crime were not the focus of this case. The jury agreed with the prosecutors. They recommended the death sentence. The trial court judge accepted that recommendation and sentenced Feltus Taylor to death. After the sentence, Feltus remained on death row at the Louisiana State Penitentiary, which is also known as Angola. For several years, his lawyers filed appeals. They asked higher courts to stop the execution. Feltus received 5 stays of execution. This meant that each time he was scheduled to die, a court delayed it. One stay came in September 1999, just 2 hours before he was to be executed. He was eating his last meal when he learned the execution was blocked. Finally, the United States Supreme Court refused to hear his appeal. No more stays were granted. A new execution date was set for June 6, 2000. On that day, Feltus Taylor was 38 years old. He was allowed to have a last meal. He ate onion rings, barbecued ribs, shrimp, corn on the cob, toast, and cheesecake. He also met with his grandmother, his brothers, and a few friends. He spoke with his spiritual advisor. Before the execution, Feltus read a short statement. He apologized to Keith Clark and to the family of Donna Ponzano. He said, "I want to tell you, Keith, and the Ponzano family that I always regretted what I've done. It was my own doing. After this is over with, I hope you can find the peace to move on. Keith Clark attended the execution in a wheelchair because of his paralysis. Lisa Allen, Donna Ponzano's sister, also attended. After Feltus spoke, Lisa Allen whispered, "Oh, Jesus," and began to cry. At 8:40 p.m. on June 6, 2000, the execution was carried out by lethal injection at the Louisiana State Penitentiary. A doctor pronounced Feltus Taylor dead. Keith Clark said afterward, "I felt justice was done. I had gone out on a limb for him, and then he shot me." Lisa Allen said she could finally have closure after 9 years. The story of Feltus Taylor ends with a man who lost his job, chose to rob and shoot 2 people, and was executed by the state for the murder of Donna Ponzano.